Welcome to Tartarian Tales 47, another CIA edition. This one, the indications of psychological vulnerabilities. And this is information gathered, it sounds like, from May 9th, 1952. So around that time, and the source it says is monitored broadcasts, unevaluated information changed to unclassified per regrading of bulletin number 20, whatever any of that means. But it is some interesting, incredible documentation of events that are sadistic, nasty, and terrible in nature, and happened back in the day to our Tartarian friends and our just all the ancient peoples that were trying to preserve their history, trying to do as much as possible, those generations of the past that were struggling to keep their history and their eternal ancient heritage preserved against forces that we are battling today in America and all over the world. And again, in the Crimea region, this is taking place here and now, today, in the present. And some things never change. Things just keep getting worse, it seems like, and their methods of evil keep getting even worse. And it's really, really terrible. But I pray that we can continue to learn from these things, because basically reverse engineering their tactics and their kind of methods of gathering information and poisoning the public and everything about it is documented here and been going on for a long time, and the methods are still going today. So I would like to read this document, and I'll chime in here and there because it's got to be preserved and seen by you guys. I think you all will enjoy it. Really wild stuff. So here we go. Let's get right into it. Indications of psychological vulnerabilities. It starts off by saying a summary where it says the Kazakh and Kyrgyz republics are implicitly reminded that Moscow's ideological surveillance is not a sporadic manifestation, but a continuous process. The historians and writers of these SSRs are urged to revise their views of the republic's past and to bear in mind that the progressive development of their people began with the union with Russia, which, incidentally, was voluntary, quote unquote. Criticism of the Ukraine's ideological weaknesses is considerably milder in tone. The targets of official attack here are certain pitfalls in university instruction, as well as continuing bourgeoisie nationalist distortions in the field of art. The Crimea, which it will be recalled was demoted from an ASSR to an ordinary oblast shortly after the last war, is now to have its ethnic history rewritten. The new history will establish the Slavic origin of the peninsula's population and refute the differing views held by Western historians. Inadequate utilization of machinery is admittedly still the principal shortcoming in Soviet industry. That's very interesting. Strengthening of centralized control is urged by Pravda as a cure-all for most of the industrial ailments. Regional editorial comment is critical of the continuing race for quantity production to the detriment of qualitative indices. So this sounds like inadequate utilization of machinery. Sounds like they've been, a bunch of people took over some kind of ancient machinery and probably all kinds of different industries that they knew nothing about. This could be airships, this could be everything, so many different ether devices, so much. And it seems like they are just, this could be done today. And again, all this stuff is happening. It's like we're seeing this happen in America. We're in the middle of it, this rewrite of history, and we can't let it be lost. We have to preserve it for as many generations as possible. So I'm going to continue. It says, ideological weaknesses. There is considerably less radio discussion of ideological failings than in previous months, and the criticism of that aspect of Soviet life is less virulent. A number of items dealing with matters of ideology in the period under review appeared in the press but not have been broadcast. Discussing education in the Rostov Oblast universities and technical colleges, Molot says that it would be incorrect and harmful not to see the grave shortcomings in the work of a number of higher educational institutions. That's how they start. The colleges. The schools, they pollute them. Here we go. In the Novosibirsk Polytechnical Institute, the Rostov Institute of Railroad Engineers, and several other institutions in teaching of specialized subjects is said to be divorced from the realities of life. This favorite Soviet expression applies primarily to Marxist dialectics, since every academic subject, from nuclear fission to ancient Greek literature, must be taught against the background of Marxism-Leninism. The failure to adapt that theory to every type of university instruction is variously referred to as political illiteracy, harmful carelessness, or worse. To train large numbers of specialists in various fields, the editorial concludes, is not enough. It is the duty of the higher institutions of learning to give the fatherland new cadres of specialists faithful to the task of Lenin and Stalin. That faith, it is implied, can be acquired only through a profound study of the theory of Lenin and Stalin, which is inseparable from any scientific or technical endeavor. This is exactly what is happening in America in the year 2022, and has been happening for a very long time. Just been disguised. Now it's right in the open. This is what's happening, people. Again. And this is from 1952, this text. Continues, the ideological application to the teaching of social sciences is the subject of discussion in a Gregorian article carried by Pravda on 28th of May. The guiding principle in the teaching of social sciences, the author says, is to train Leninists, and that term applies considerably more than a narrow specialization in any branch of science or technology. A Leninist, as defined by Gregorian, is a politico-social activist familiar with the laws of societal development and capable of participating in the political leadership of the country. Talmudism, an uncritical attitude, says the article, still characterize the work of many Armenian universities and institutes. Thus, in the Republic's institutes of agriculture, pedagogy, and physical culture, the ideological end of the work is said to have been relegated to a secondary place. The basic contrast between bourgeoisie and proletarian ideology and the superiority of the Soviet socialism regime over that of capitalism do not get satisfactory treatment. This is very relevant, and it almost feels like when they refer to the Republic in kind of the past tense, and like them just trashing the Republic, getting rid of the Republic, that's what we have now, and they've been trying to tell us that it's a democracy and all this other stuff for so long, but it's always been a republic. This is how it changes the information. It just gradually gets steam plowed into what they want it to be. This is all the same stuff. Continues. Kazakhstan Yaza Pravda, May 29th, refers in general terms to the favorable effect on artistic and literary activities, as well as on scientific research in the Republic, produced by the intensification of attention to the ideological education of the communists and non-partisans alike. The only shortcoming in that work, according to the paper, is that it is still lagging behind the growing demands, in other words, unsatisfactory. Mass ideological and political work should be widely developed in the homes of the people, so that the remnants of capitalism in their minds may be eradicated for all time. There is no further amplification of this point, however. Sounds like Oregon, Seattle, California, New York, Boston. Nuts. The Kazakh Party organizations are responsible for the wrong impression of past and present Kazakh life produced by the exhibits in a number of the Republic's museums, according to a dispatch of Zemtsov on the 29th of May. Many museum officials, he says, have glossed over the fact that the union of the Kazakh people with the Russians was motivated by their desire to save their native land from foreign invaders. All one gathers from viewing the various museum exhibits, says the dispatch, is that Kazakhstan was annexed to Russia by an imperial decree, and that is a crude falsification of a historical event. Concealed from the museum visitors is the historical fact that the Kazakh people saw in their union with Russia the salvation of their native land from foreign invaders in a method of overcoming their backwardness, which is, again, how they do it. Museums, education, everywhere, TV shows, everywhere, theater, arts, culture. They make sure they conquer the arts and they have control of the arts, because the arts affects people very strongly, especially if you gear them towards only experiencing beautiful artistic revelations and moments of enlightenment from a certain type of art. You can really steer the power of the people in a direction that you can control. The paper continues to say another serious aberration from the prevailing ideological line is the failure to explain that the struggle of the Kazakh people against their exploiters had merged with the revolutionary fight of the Russian working class against the bourgeoisie landlord regime for a socialist revolution. Nor is the present life and development of the Kazakhstan Republic properly reflected in the museum exhibits. Most of them are said to be dealing with the past, which, as has already been pointed out, is frequently distorted beyond recognition. Thus, in the Kochetev Regional Museum, the pre-revolutionary life of Kazakhstan is presented in the shape of luxurious baize tents in their women's fancy clothes, but there is not a single exhibit showing the impoverished life of the Kazakh working class. One looks in vain for exhibits portraying the present life and prosperity of the Republic, says Zemtsov in conclusion. Such is the case, for example, in the Guryev, Kochetev, and Zambul regional museums. Quote, such museums, in effect, deprive the visitors of the possibility of juxtaposing the joyful present with the damned past. The Ukraine's ideological deportment is again the object of Moscow's attention. A long, unsigned Pravda article under a Kiev dateline of June 2nd, but not broadcast, criticizes the Ukrainian Academy of Sciences, the Republic's Committee for Arts, and the teaching of social sciences in the universities for the painfully slow and at times disappointing ideological progress. 70% of the deputy directors of the Academy's scientific research institutions are said to lack ideological and academic training for their jobs. That, it is claimed, goes a long way towards explaining the unsatisfactory research progress achieved in the fields of linguistics, history, philosophy, ethnography, and others. The work of the Ukrainian Committee for Arts is still characterized by rude mistakes and bourgeoisie nationalist distortions, despite the strong warning against such deviations issued by the Central Committee of the Ukrainian Communist Party several months ago. Referring to the low ideological level of university instruction, particularly in social sciences, the article points out that among the Republic's 215 heads of social science departments, there is only one professor and one doctor of sciences, while none of the heads of the Marxism-Leninism departments has any academic degree at all. The article is particularly critical of the ideological deterioration that has been noted in the Master of Training propaganda personnel. This most important business is said to have been criminally neglected by the Central Committee's Department of Agitation and Propaganda. In 1946, 35% of the propaganda department managers at the Rayon and City Party committees were university graduates, but the present number of degree holders is only 21%. Socialist competition between Russian and Ukrainian collective farms designed to strengthen the friendship between the two nations has been going on for several years, although for some reason or other this aspect of friendly relations has never been given much publicity. Referring to the subject of on 5th of June, a special Ukrainian language broadcast from Poltava indicates that Russo-Ukrainian agricultural competition will henceforth be promoted on an increasing scale. As implied in the case of the currently competing Molotov and Luke collective farms, the elder brother attitude characterizing the relations between the two republics also dominates the friendly competition between individual farms. Thus, in an interview arranged between the leaders of the mentioned farms, both presumably model kolkhozes, it is emphasized that the Ukrainians are far behind their Russian competitors. For example, the stock of cattle in both kolkhozes is nearly the same, but the 1951 milk yield per Russian cow was 4,000 liters, whereas the Ukrainian cow was able to produce only half of that. The interview ends with the Russian livestock farm manager advising the Ukrainian Kolkov to pay more attention to the selection of breeding stock in order to increase the milk yields, and the Ukrainian responding that his remark has been accepted as correct. And then it continues, well, now they're just trying to pretty much get rid of the farms, and they want control of them so they can all be fake now at this point. At least during these times, it seems like the food was real, at least, and they were actually doing things like yields and increasing yields through natural methods, and nowadays it's just all toxified. This is the pre-toxic era here. It still was probably a little bit whatever, but now in our time, nothing is real. The food is garbage, and now they're trying to get rid of it all. So, sweet. Here we go. Let's learn more about what happened in the past that is happening now again. and no one's telling us. Well, maybe there'll be a CIA paper in the 2050 that will discuss all this garbage that we're going through now. But here we go. Crimean history to be rewritten. The joint scientific session of the History and Philosophy departments of the Crimean branch of the USSR Academy of Sciences, recently held at Simferopol, is told that the history of Crimea, as currently presented, is all wrong, according to a broadcast of 4th of June. The impending official change of the peninsula's past was keynoted in Academician Grikov's opening speech, which referred darkly to the grave errors that have crept into the treatment of this subject. The prevailing beliefs that the Crimea was the original homeland of the Goths, Khazars, Genoans, Tartars, and Turks stems from Mars' scholastic, anti-scientific conception in the matter of the Slavs' origin. The Slavs, it is claimed, had inhabited the peninsula even before the formation of the Kiev Principality, and their cultural influence has since predominated in the life of the population. The reason for this misinterpretation of the true history of the Crimea, as pointed out at the session, is that it has always been studied and publicized as something apart from the history of the Russian state. Crimean archaeologists studying the country's past are said to have established the presence of Slavs in that area as far back as the 3rd century. The affirmation of bourgeoisie scientists that a Goth state existed on the peninsula at that time is refuted as a pure invention, which unfortunately is reflected also in the works of certain Soviet historians. The latter are sharply criticized for exaggerating the historical role of Byzantium, the Goths, and the Tatar Khanate in Crimea. Those people, it is revealed, were among the aliens who constituted an insignificant part of the native Slav population and were quickly assimilated. An apparently irrelevant item on the session's agenda was Zagarovsky's report proving, with concrete documents, that the Anglo-American French intervention in Crimea in 1918 to 1920 was noted for its mass murder and violence. So this is just blatant reproducing of history, and this is exactly what we see with the news. When you control the news and the publications and all those people, and you put fear into people, then people can only talk in secret, and all the public stuff becomes hidden for people like this to discover years later. This stuff is just mind-blowingly similar. The decision adopted by the scientific session calls for a thoroughgoing revision of the history of Crimea with a view to eliminating from it all sorts of distortions, oversimplification, uncritical approach, and Talmudism, as outlined in Stalin's Marxism and Questions of Linguistics. Quote, in view of the numerous distortions in the history of Crimea, the session found it necessary to revise the historical and reference literature published in the post-war period, particularly the textbooks, to reconstruct the exhibits of the Crimean museums to conform to the new scientific data in the field of history, and to devote more attention to the training Crimean historians. Now, once this whole thing is over, that's happening now, what do you think that it's going to be rewritten as? Who the victor is going to be that is going to rewrite this present history of what's happening now in all these places? Because America is in the dark, and the rest of the world knows exactly what evil people of America, Germany, UK, and stuff have done in Ukraine for way too long. And it's time that people pay for doing crimes against humanity and the biosphere. I've had enough of it, and I'm sure you all have too. So there's a few different parts here that I'm going to skip because it gets a little ridiculous, but I'll include the link below, or I'll try to find the link below and share some more stuff with you. But you should all definitely check this out because there is a lot of amazing stuff, and I just don't want to go too crazy into this because it will be a very long video. But this one was pretty good. This particular part, it says, gingerly approach to religion re-emphasized, which is one of their other methods. In a lecture for the home audience on socialism and communism of 6 July, Professor Stepanyan speaks of the many ideological shortcomings to be eliminated in the transitional stage between the two systems. Some of the Soviet scientists, he says, still hold idealistic and metaphysical views, which must be changed. The survivals of capitalism among the population at large are characterized as un-Bolshevik attitude towards socialist property, nationalist and religious prejudices, petty bourgeoisie ethics, and an irresponsible attitude toward the family. It is against this heritage of the past that the Communist Party is said to be taking decisive measures. Although the professor makes no reference to the nature of the mentioned measures, his implicit suggestion is that no such tactics are to be employed in the fight against religion. A gingerly approach to the question of religion is, it is implied, the correct line, since administrative measures might do more harm than good. Extreme caution must be exercised in the struggle against religious prejudices. Much harm is being done by those who offend religious sentiments in that struggle. One must avoid offending the religious sentiments on the faith of the faithful by crude administrative measures. And now what are they doing to religion? They opened up liquor stores and they closed churches. They've been blowing up old churches all over the world, even though they're probably not churches originally. They've just absolutely, just the people that have represented the church and most of the religions have been not very positive, not very good role models at all. In pretty much any religion that's out there now, sadly. But again, this is how it goes down. Industry. There's a section on that as well. This says centralized control of industry is, according to Pravda, the basic principle of true Bolshevik economic leadership. Such control, however, is unthinkable without constant and rigid supervision over every detail of the job, since, according to Stalin, it is from details that great projects emerged. Mentioned in this connection are a number of unnamed ministries, trusts, and other industrial organizations, but the Ministry of the Black Metallurgical Industry is singled out for editorial censure. The low level of management of the Baikal ore mines, a vital sector of the Ural metal industry, is said to be due to the lax supervision exercised by the ministry. Those mines, it is asserted, have been working unrhythmically with interruptions for a long time, and they are considerably behind schedules now, and nothing is being done about it. So I have a feeling there were all kinds of mines, all kinds of different technology that these people, these invaders, these infestors, had just taken over from this ancient world. Like even the Disney movie Anastasia, all the Romanov, when that beautiful, what's seemingly beautiful and elegant and just different world got changed, and this communism, this Marxist, this evil force took over, so much changed, and it shows just how long it takes for these things to happen, and it's so ridiculous. This part says, oh God, the key to production success, says Radianska Ukraina, editorially on 28th May, is the proper utilization of machinery, that is, to its full capacity. Discussing the progress of the South Ukrainian canal construction, the paper says that the excellent machinery made available for that project is not performing as it should because the men behind the machines are not doing their part of the job. Cited as a typical example of Zaporozhye Constructions Administration, one of the leading building organizations on the South Ukrainian Canal project, half of its earth-moving machines were idle in April, and graders and scrapers were poorly utilized. Disparaging reference is made also to the organization's leaders' methods of checking the socialist competition of its workers on the air instead of by personal supervision. This, the editorial concludes, is bureaucratic falsehood, not leadership. And that's been going on in America. So many people have just been put in charge, and they do not have any ability to do what they're being charged. Kind of like the president's son, not the president, whatever, that lunatic's son, and who gets all these amazing jobs with not one bit of proof, one bit of justification or ability to do any of these things. And so it goes on and on. There's so much in this. Definitely read it if you can. I'm skipping through a decent amount. I'm basically reading half of it. This one section sounds interesting. The Dead Souls Racket. Racketeering in Soviet industry, in the Western sense, is never discussed on the radio, since that practice is usually associated with industrialists and businessmen in capitalist countries. References to shady machinations, Soviet-style, generally appear in feuilletons and other humorous press items. Ryabov tells the story of the head of the Mozaisk industrial combine, Tereshkin, now in jail, whose love of money got the better of his industrial talents and loyalty to the state. Learning that a gypsy caravan had camped near the town, Tereshkin decided to change their nomadic ways of life by assigning part of the combine's production to them, including the necessary operating funds, which amounted to many thousands of rubles. The gypsies, however, decided to leave, which amounted after a short adventure into settled life, having departed in an unknown direction. When the prosecuting authorities caught up with Tereshkin's activities, it was revealed that the horse-drawn caravan of the untrustworthy gypsies, if there were any gypsies, could not be overtaken by the Combine's officials who pursued them in automobiles, if there was any pursuit. The close resemblance between Tereshkin's gypsies and Gogol's dead souls, Ryabov points out, is too obvious to be overlooked. It was learned after further investigation that the black Bowers that operated within the Combine and was known to only a few select officials represented more tangible evidence than the gypsy myth and had something to do with the disappearance of state funds. This Black Bowers, incidentally, was the repository of funds acquired from the illegal production and sales of felt boots and the distributor of the said funds among the officials, making up Tereshkin's retinue. Interesting. And now we know they sell a lot of different things to raise money for war and elections in this country. They were selling all kinds of things around the world, all kinds of illegal, just absolutely anti-human things to create profits in as many countries as they possibly could and just funnel it into the democratic machine so that we can get the world that we have now. How sweet. This section I thought was pretty cool. Miscellaneous. This is one of the last ones, actually. Miscellaneous education for children. In a lengthy program for children broadcast from Stavropol on 6th of June, Soviet youngsters are told that the ignorance in which American school children are kept is part of a grand design for war on the part of the Truman government. It is the obvious aim of that government, the children are told, to bring up a generation of barbarians whose reading ability would not extend beyond understanding bomber operation instructions, and their mathematics will be limited to making artillery calculations. An unnamed American teacher is quoted as having stated that we must become familiar with the thought that a new world war is inevitable. In primary school textbooks, the letter A is said to appear opposite the word atom and B opposite the word bomb. How nice, they just get it. The kids are never spared. The kids actually suffer the worst. And it's the saddest thing because the majority of parents don't see it happening and they let it happen and they encourage it even. They give them iPads, they let them loose on it, they send them down rabbit holes of YouTube, they give them cable in their room, they let them watch horror movies, they give them candies with natural flavors and terrible poisons in them, they take them to the doc and get them jabbed with whatever they're feared into giving them. So many things, and it's nuts. And it seems as if we've all been basically just enticed to go to war with each other all over the world. The people that control this place control both sides, and it's becoming more and more obvious and more just that it's been going on for a long time, and it's really stinks. And the very last thing says, this is pretty interesting. Russia, the home of the auto. The first self-moving four-seater carriage was built by an unnamed Russian serf as early as 200 years ago, so that's 1750s, according to an anonymous talk heard on the Home Service on the 7th of June. It is also asserted that the first two-stroke internal combustion engine was constructed by a Russian scientist in 1879. So how many of our American inventions are really ancient Russian inventions? I really wonder how many industries got taken over, how many industries got taken out, how many different technologies like mines, oil riggings, those things were theirs, ether, all the buildings, all the tops, everything. How much was it that they knew about? And we just got replaced, our history, every single bit of history, the science, all the history of the science, the history of the math, everything. It's all been replaced in a disgusting way. And how can we trust it? Our parents' generation didn't question anything. Still believe that they went to the moon in an aluminum, capsule made out of absolute, pretty much aluminum foil. And people still believe that they went there wholeheartedly. It's like, dear God, we've come a long way, and it's so easy to convince the populations of lies because nobody does the proper research, and the people that do get silenced. So it's really easy, and it's really a shame. So definitely check out the link below. There is still more that I didn't include. I could have, but I want you all to check it out because you got to read it for yourself and pass it around. Take a look. These things are just staring us all in the face. They're happening now, and the more we know about them, at least we can tell people, we can warn people, and we can make sure that we are not fooled and our minds remain strong enough to plow through all of the nonsense and see what is right always, so that we can hopefully be creatively thinking towards solutions for all of these problems. We need to eliminate this evil from the world. It has been going on far too long. In the ancient people of history, all the innocent ones, all the beautiful ones that are just like us, have taken too many hits. We can't take another one. The Tibetans, the Tartarians. How many more amazing cultures do we have to lose? Does the Americans have to be the next? The Atlanteans, the Romans, all of them. We can't be the next ones to be lost. So, do whatever you can. We got to protect this place, protect everyone. Bless you all.